Hey there, it's your Garden Ulrich again, and today we're talking about a topic that makes thousands of beautiful, hard-working shrubs suffer needlessly every single spring. I'm talking about the great April pruning frenzy. You know exactly what I mean. Spring has finally arrived. The birds are singing, the first real rays of sunshine are warming the back of your neck, and somewhere down the street, your neighbor Bob is already firing up the electric hedge trimmer. It sounds like a Formula One race mixed with a chainsaw massacre. Every April, perfectly good, highly motivated gardeners step out into their yards armed with sharp shears and a dangerous amount of cabin fever. They see a bush, they see a branch sticking out, and the primal urge kicks in. They just start hacking away. But if these plants had a voice, they would be screaming at you. The lawn is just thinking, "Bro, I just woke up from hibernation, but the shrubs? The shrubs are yelling, 'Whoa, buddy! I spent all of last summer and fall getting dressed up for the spring party. I carefully protected my flower buds through freezing blizzards, and you just chopped off my entire wardrobe.'" In this video, I'm going to give you the top 8 shrubs that will absolutely never forgive you if you prune them in April. I'm going to explain exactly why they hate it and what you should be doing instead. Make sure you stick around until the very end, because the last shrub on this list is the victim of the biggest, most heartbreaking garden crime I see every single year. Let me tell you right now, the biggest mistake in the spring garden isn't doing too little. It's doing too much too early. So put down the shears, grab a cup of coffee, and let's get into it. Number 1, the golden rule breaker, the forsythia. The forsythia. It is the absolute harbinger of spring. When you see that explosion of brilliant yellow, you know winter is finally in the rearview mirror. But here is the tragic reality. In early April, just before it pops, or even right as it starts to bloom, people look at their forsythia and think, "You know what, it looks a bit wild. The branches are all over the place. Let me just tidy it up a bit." Let me explain what you are actually doing when you prune a forsythia in April. Pruning a forsythia right before or during its spring bloom is like going to get a haircut the day before your wedding. But instead of using scissors, the barber uses a lawnmower and then charges you for the privilege. You are completely ruining the main event. You have to understand the biology of early spring bloomers. Forsythias do not create their flower buds in the spring. They are not fast workers. They are actually incredibly meticulous planners. A forsythia creates its flower buds during the previous summer. From July to September, while you were drinking iced tea on the patio, your forsythia was quietly building tiny little microscopic flower buds all along its branches. It locked those buds up tight to survive the frost, the snow, and the freezing rain. Those branches are literally loaded spring coils, just waiting for the temperature to rise so they can explode into yellow flowers. When you go out in early April and give that shrub a flat top haircut because you want it to look neat, you're amputating the exact branches that hold the flowers. You did all the waiting, you endured the whole winter, and right at the finish line, you threw away the prize. So, what is the rule here? Hands off. You do not touch a forsythia in April. You let it do its wild, glorious yellow thing. Wait until the flowers have completely dropped off and the green leaves start to push through. That is your window. Right after it finishes blooming, you can go in and prune out the oldest, thickest branches right down to the ground to encourage new growth. But in April, the only thing you should be cutting is a few small branches to bring indoors for a vase. Number 2, the heartbreak of the lilac. Let's move on to our second victim. The lilac is the undisputed king of spring fragrance. Nothing smells quite like a warm May afternoon next to a blooming lilac bush. But in April, lilacs look a bit bare. They have those fat, prominent green buds sitting right at the tips of the branches. And for some reason, amateur gardeners look at those long branches and think, if I snip the tops off, it will force the plant to grow bushier at the bottom. Snipping the tips off a lilac in April is like throwing away a winning lottery ticket because you didn't like the font the numbers were printed in. It is an absolute tragedy of timing. Lilacs operate on a system of terminal buds. That means the most important, spectacular, massive flower clusters are developed at the very tips of the branches from the previous year's growth. The lilac spent the entire previous year channeling its energy to the end of that branch. It built a tough outer casing to protect the delicate floral structures inside from ice and wind. When April rolls around, that bud is swelling up. It is literally days away from cracking open and starting the process of becoming a massive purple or white cone of incredible scent. If you walk by with your bypass pruners and snip off the top 12 inches of that branch, you have just eliminated the flower, period. The plant won't magically generate a new flower lower down the stem. That's not how its biology works. Instead, the plant will panic. It will push out a bunch of leafy green growth from lower nodes, and you will have a perfectly green bush with absolutely zero flowers. You will spend the rest of the spring looking over the fence at your neighbor's blooming lilac, wondering if there is something wrong with your soil. There is nothing wrong with your soil. You just cut the buffet away right before dinner was served. If your lilac is getting too tall or too unruly, the time to deal with it is exactly the same as the forsythia, immediately after the flowers have faded and died. And even then, you don't just give it a buzz cut. You reach deep inside the bush and remove a third of the oldest, thickest trunks right at the base. This lets light into the center and encourages new, vigorous shoots from the roots. But in April, those fat buds at the tips of the branches are sacred. Do not touch them. Number 3. The big leaf hydrangea tragedy. Now we come to the most misunderstood plant in the entire suburban landscape, the big leaf hydrangea, officially known as Hydrangea macrophylla. These are the ones that give you those giant blue or pink mop head flowers. In April, a big leaf hydrangea looks awful. Let's just be honest. It looks like a bundle of dead brown sticks sticking out of the mud. Often, the old crispy brown flower heads from last year are still hanging on, looking like sad, forgotten decorations from a party that ended 6 months ago. The highly motivated, overly energetic spring gardener looks at this mess and thinks, wow, that looks dead. I need to clean this up. I'm going to cut all these brown sticks all the way down to the ground so the fresh green growth can come up. Stop right there. Doing this is like waking up someone who is in a deep, peaceful sleep by throwing a bucket of ice water on their face and then stealing their breakfast. You are ruining their year. Here is the secret of the big leaf hydrangea. Those ugly, brown, dead-looking sticks are not dead. They are the most important part of the plant. Big leaf hydrangeas bloom on what we call old wood. This means that the blueprint for this summer's giant blue or pink flowers is hidden inside those dry, ugly stems. Over the winter, the plant stored its dormant flower buds just beneath the bark of those old stems. If you cut those stems down to the ground in April, you are removing every single flower bud for the upcoming summer. The plant will survive, sure. It will push up beautiful, lush, green leafy stems from the root crown. You will have a very healthy-looking, very green bush. And you will wait all July and all August and all September for a single flower to appear. And it never will. You have turned a magnificent flowering shrub into a boring green meatball. Now, why does this mistake happen so often? Because there is another type of hydrangea called a panicle hydrangea, like the famous limelight varieties. Those bloom on new wood, meaning you actually should cut them back in the spring. The confusion between these two types causes millions of big leaf hydrangeas to be decapitated every April. So, what is the action plan for your big leaf hydrangea in April? Absolute extreme patience. You wait until you see tiny green leaves starting to sprout from the sides of those ugly brown sticks. Once you see where the life is, you take your pruners, you find the old brown flower head at the top, and you make a tiny snip just above the first pair of healthy, swelling green buds. That's it. You leave the rest of the stick alone. Those green buds are your summer show. Number 4. The weeping wound of the birch and maple shrubs. Let's shift gears slightly. Sometimes you have large shrubs or multi-stemmed ornamental trees in your borders, like Japanese maples or dwarf birches, or maybe a shrubby walnut. You walk past them in April and a branch is drooping over the pathway, hitting you in the face. You think, no problem, I'll just take the saw or the loppers and take that one branch off. It's just a quick surgical strike. Do not do it. Pruning a birch, a maple, or a walnut in April is the biological equivalent of donating blood, but completely forgetting to put the bandage on afterwards. You're going to create a mess, and you are going to severely weaken the patient. Here is the underlying biology that you cannot see. In April, the soil is warming up. As the soil warms, the roots of these specific plants wake up from dormancy with extreme aggression. The roots act like massive, heavy-duty hydraulic pumps. They begin sucking water and nutrients out of the thawing soil and pushing it upward into the trunk and the branches to force the leaf buds to open. This creates something called root pressure. In April, the root pressure inside a maple or a birch is at its absolute maximum. The sap is rushing up through the vascular system of the plant like a fire hose. If you cut a branch off during this time, the plant has no ability to stop the flow. It cannot heal the wound fast enough to counter the pressure coming from below. The wound will literally bleed. It will drip sap, sometimes for weeks. I have seen Japanese maples pruned in early spring that dripped so much sap, it left a permanent dark stain on the patio below them. This bleeding is not just an aesthetic issue, it is a massive loss of energy and hydration for the plant. You are draining its lifeblood exactly at the moment it needs it most to push out its new foliage. Furthermore, that sugary sap dripping down the bark is an open invitation to every fungus, bacteria, and pest in the neighborhood. You are setting up a buffet for disease, but you forgot to give the plant any cutlery to defend itself. If you have an ornamental maple, a birch, or any known bleeder, April is the worst possible time to touch them. The best time to prune these plants is in late summer or early autumn, when the fierce spring growth has finished, the leaves are fully formed, and the internal hydraulic pressure of the plant has settled down. At that time, if you make a cut, the wood is dry, the plant compartmentalizes the wound quickly, and there is no bleeding. So, if a branch is hitting you in the face in April, duck. Tie it back with a piece of string if you have to, but do not cut it. Number 5. The Grand Magnolia Massacre. Moving on to chapter number 5, the magnolia. Oh, the majesty of the magnolia. Whether it's a star magnolia shrub or a large saucer magnolia tree, these plants are the undisputed prima donnas of the spring garden. They have those incredible, massive, fuzzy buds that look like little silver pussy willows all winter, and then they open up into flowers the size of dinner plates. But sometimes people look at a magnolia in April and decide it is getting too big, or it's growing a little lopsided, or it just needs to be kept in check. So they go in with the pruning saw. Pruning a magnolia in April, right before or during its bloom, is like telling an opera singer to sing quieter right during the soaring climax of her aria. Or, better yet, it's like trying to remodel your living room by knocking down walls while you are actively hosting a fancy cocktail party. It is a terrible idea, and the plant will hold a grudge for years. First, just like the Forsythia and the Lilac, magnolias form their flower buds the previous summer. Every cut you make in April destroys the exact thing you planted the shrub for. But the issue with magnolias goes much deeper than just losing a few flowers. Magnolias are ancient plants. Biologically speaking, they walk the earth alongside the dinosaurs. Because they evolved so early in botanical history, their cellular structure is a bit different from modern trees. They are incredibly bad at healing wounds. When you prune an oak or an apple tree, the tree quickly grows a ring of protective tissue, callous wood, over the cut to seal it off from the outside world. Magnolias are terrible at this. They do it very slowly, and sometimes they don't do it at all. When you make large pruning cuts on a magnolia, the wood often dies back several inches below the cut. It leaves ugly dead stubs that look awful and invite rot. Furthermore, magnolias are structurally designed to look best when they are left entirely alone. They have a natural, sweeping, elegant architecture. When amateur gardeners try to force a magnolia into a specific shape by pruning the tips of the branches, they trigger the plant to throw out a bunch of straight, ugly vertical shoots called water sprouts. You end up ruining the elegant shape forever. The rule for magnolias is simple. Put down the shears, throw them in the shed, and lock the door. You should almost never prune a magnolia unless a branch is dead, diseased, or completely broken by a storm. If you absolutely must remove a branch because it is rubbing against your house, wait until midsummer after the leaves have fully hardened off. But in April, let the prima donna sing. Number 6. The rhododendron ruin. Let's get to the 6th point. Step number 6. The rhododendron and its close cousin, the azalea. These are broadleaf evergreens, which means they keep their green leaves all winter long, and because they look green and alive in April, people treat them differently than the bare sticks of the forsythia. Sometimes a rhododendron gets a little leggy. It gets tall and bare at the bottom, with all the leaves and buds at the top. The gardener looks at it and says, "I'm going to give this a tight, hard haircut to make it dense and compact, just like a boxwood hedge." This is a catastrophic miscalculation. Pruning a rhododendron in April is like putting your entire life savings into a high-security vault, locking the heavy steel door, and then immediately forgetting the combination. You did all the hard work, but you're getting absolutely none of the payoff. Look closely at the tips of your rhododendron branches in April. You will see massive, swollen, slightly sticky buds. Those aren't just leaves. Those are the spectacular trusses of flowers that the plant spent the last 9 months engineering. Rhododendrons are the heavy lifters of the late spring garden. They put an immense amount of metabolic energy into forming those buds. If you take a pair of hedge shears to a rhododendron in April to round it off, you are slicing off the climax of the plant's entire year. You will be left with a hacked-up green bush that looks like it lost a fight with a lawnmower, and you will get 0 flowers. Now, it is true that rhododendrons can tolerate severe pruning. If you have an old, overgrown monster that is blocking your window, you actually can cut it all the way down to the stumps to rejuvenate it. But you must understand that if you do this in spring, you are willingly sacrificing the entire year's bloom, and probably next year's too. It takes a massive amount of energy for the plant to push dormant buds out of old, thick wood. If your goal is just normal maintenance and shaping, you never do it in April. You wait until May or June, right after the flowers have naturally wilted. At that point, you can carefully snap off the old flower heads with your fingers, a process called deadheading, which stops the plant from wasting energy making seeds. You can then selectively prune back a few of the longest branches to a lower pair of leaves. This encourages branching without sacrificing the show, but right now in April, those sticky buds are off limits. Number 7. The Rambling Rose Robbery. And now we come to the things you should stop doing to your climbing vines. Chapter number 7. The Rambling Rose. There is a very deeply ingrained myth in gardening that all roses must be aggressively pruned in the early spring, right around the time the forsythia blooms. Every gardening book and magazine tells you to march out into the garden, find your roses, and cut them back hard to outward-facing buds to encourage vigorous new growth. And 4. Modern hybrid tea roses, floribundas, and shrub roses. That is absolutely true. But if you apply that exact same rule to a rambling rose or a once-blooming climbing rose, you are committing a terrible crime. Treating a rambling rose like a hybrid tea rose is like using a recipe for a delicate chocolate cake to try and cook a steak dinner. You are using the wrong instructions for the wrong ingredients, and the result is going to be incredibly disappointing. Rambling roses are the massive, vigorous vines that throw out canes 10, 15, or 20 feet long. They drape over pergolas, they climb high into trees, and in early summer, they produce a cascading waterfall of thousands of small flowers all at once. They are breathtaking. But here is the catch. Ramblers and many antique climbing roses only bloom on the wood that grew the previous year. Last summer, the plant threw out those incredibly long, green, whippy canes. Over the winter, the wood hardened. In April, the buds all along those massive canes are preparing to sprout the short little side shoots that will hold the summer flowers. If you go out in April with your thick leather gloves and your heavy-duty loppers and you cut those long canes back because you think you are cleaning up the rose, you are robbing yourself of the waterfall. You are cutting away the flowering wood. The rose will respond by panicking and throwing out a dozen new, aggressively thorny, vegetative canes that will shoot into the air and produce absolutely nothing but leaves for the rest of the year. For rambling roses and once-blooming climbers, April is the time for tying, not for pruning. Take those long canes from last year, bend them horizontally along your trellis or fence, and tie them in. Bending them horizontally slows down the sap flow and forces the plant to push flowers out of every single bud along the stem. You only prune a rambler in midsummer, immediately after that massive waterfall of flowers has faded. Then, you can cut out the oldest canes right at the base to make room for the new growth. But in April, keep your pruners far away from those long, beautiful canes. Number 8. The Weigela Wipeout. Finally, we arrive at the last shrub on our list. Chapter number 8. The Weigela. I told you at the beginning of this video that the last shrub is the victim of the biggest, most heartbreaking garden crime I see every year. And that crime is what I call the meatballing epidemic. Weigelas are gorgeous, tough, reliable shrubs. They have beautifully arched, cascading branches that weep toward the ground. In late spring and early summer, those arching branches are absolutely smothered in bright pink, red, or white trumpet-shaped flowers. The hummingbirds go crazy for them. The architecture of a Weigela is meant to look like a botanical fountain. But human beings, especially suburban homeowners in April, have a very weird psychological quirk. They love geometry, they look at the graceful, sweeping, weeping branches of the Weigela, and they think, that looks messy. I want it to look like a perfect sphere, so they get out the electric hedge trimmers, they start the motor, and they just walk around the shrub, shaving off the outer 6 inches of every single branch, turning a graceful fountain into a tight, dense, ugly green meatball. Taking hedge trimmers to a Weigela in April is like taking a beautiful, hand-painted masterpiece and running it through a paper shredder just because you wanted it to fit into a smaller envelope. You are completely destroying the essence of what makes the plant beautiful. When you shave the outside of a Weigela in April, you do 2 terrible things. First, you cut off all the flowering tips. Weigelas bloom heavily on the growth from the previous year. All those trumpet flowers were queued up and ready to go on the ends of those arching branches. You just shredded them into compost. Second, you ruin the plant's architecture. When you cut the tip off a branch, the plant responds by pushing out 2 or 3 stiff, rigid shoots from the cut point. Over a few years of this meatball pruning, the outer edge of the shrub becomes a dense, woody, impenetrable thicket of twigs. The inside of the shrub gets completely shaded out, the inner leaves die, and you are left with a hollow shell of a plant that barely flowers and looks entirely unnatural. If you have a Weigela, you must respect its natural weeping shape. Never ever use electric hedge shears on it. In April, you let it be. Let it bloom. Let the hummingbirds enjoy the show. When the flowers start to fade in the early summer, you can do what is called renewal pruning. You reach deep into the center of the shrub with your bypass loppers, and you completely remove 1 out of every 3 of the thickest, oldest branches right at the ground level. You leave the graceful, arching branches entirely intact. This opens up the center to sunlight, encourages new, flexible branches to emerge from the roots, and preserves that beautiful fountain shape. So, let's wrap this up and bring it all together. What is the grand philosophy here? What is the golden rule that Garden Ulrich wants you to remember every single spring? It is simply this: timing is more important than fertilizer. Timing is more important than soil. Timing is the ultimate secret of the master gardener. When you walk out into your yard in April and the sun is shining and you feel that overwhelming urge to just do something, to cut, to clean, to control nature, take a deep breath. Look at the plant. Ask yourself, where does this plant keep its flowers? If you don't know the answer, do not make the cut. The plants have been working hard all winter. Give them the respect they deserve, let them finish their spring performance, and leave the pruning shears in the shed until the show is over. If you found this advice helpful and you want to know what other massive mistakes are destroying lawns and gardens across the neighborhood right now, you need to watch my next videos. Which mistakes ruin the lawn the fastest in spring? What is the absolute worst thing you can do with your fertilizer? Watch this video right over here to find out exactly how to avoid the biggest lawn care disasters. If you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for being here and happy gardening.